5 years, so I might have seen some of you there if you've ever gone to that event, but this is my first time at the Trad Festival, and it's got a really lovely vibe. So yeah, it's really nice to see you all, and I hope that we can sort of give you a bit of an insight into the paraclimbing world, and maybe not necessarily the other side of climbing, but something that I'm really passionate about is kind of inclusivity and diversity in climbing. So making sure that we just acknowledge that maybe climbing isn't as accessible for everybody, and interestingly, it's something that I hadn't really realised wasn't on my radar until a big turn in my life and in my career, and when I actually ended up meeting Hannah. But we'll get to that once I've talked a little bit about how I got into climbing. I don't think we even said my name. I know Gilly introduced me, but I'm Bea, and this is my wife Hannah. So I started climbing trees when I was very young, and it all began really as a natural instinct that I like to be high up and I like to climb everything. Amazingly, I didn't actually start climbing or find rock climbing until I was about 16, and I was lucky enough to be offered a job at my local climbing wall cleaning the toilets. So it all began for me in the Louvre, which is lovely, and I gradually worked my way up through the company until they trusted me enough at the age of 17 to become an instructor. And that's actually what I've done now for 17 years. I'm 34 next week, so I've done a lot of climbing and a lot of coaching. It's all really I've ever done. I ended up doing a degree in adventure education, which sort of helped me build my foundations as a coach, and after travelling New Zealand a bit, I went on to found my business called Bea Climbing Coaching, and I've been doing that for probably about 15 years now. So I worked as an instructor in some climbing walls to build up my experience and knowledge, and then started my own coaching company. So after doing that for a couple of years, I started to, I don't know if I was drawn to certain types of people or if people were drawn to me, but I started working with a really nice diverse range of individuals, and one day I met a climber who had only the use of one of her arms, and I built this awesome bond with her, and she was a really lovely lady, and I realised that for me the really interesting thing in coaching is working out how to make coaching accessible for everybody. Like, you can teach a technique, and with 4 limbs, it can be relatively straightforward. When you have to work out how do I teach that same technique in really a completely different way for this individual, it kind of took my coaching to the next level of my kind of desire to teach and the reward that I got from it. And then I was lucky enough to I think I was noticed by Robin O'Leary, who was currently coaching the GB paraclimbing team, and I did an event with him where we tried to get more paraclimbers to White Spider Climbing, where we were working at the time, and after that event he asked me if I'd be interested in working with the GB paraclimbing team, and that kind of spiraled the rest of my career and really changed my life, because I happened to meet Hannah, who was part of the GB paraclimbing team at the time. For me, that was a really pivotal time in my life, because I'd actually been with my boyfriend for 7 years at this point, and assumed that that was the pathway of my life, and was pretty much, ready to settle down and get married. And I joined this team, and this nutter came into my life and changed everything. And yeah, it was a really tough journey, and I hadn't really expected that I was going to start talking to you about this, but I'll go into it, because I think it's quite nice to just be open and vulnerable, isn't it? I'll get to know you all. Yeah, it was hard to make a massive U-turn in my life and realise that maybe I wasn't 100% the person I thought I knew I was, or yeah, so I've got a lot to thank Hannah for, because she really taught me that you might not necessarily be the best version of you, and until you find the person that really releases that in you, it can really change your life. So yeah, being brave enough to make that change and open myself up to that really vulnerable situation was the best thing I ever did in my life. And yeah, we then went on to travel the world competing. I got to coach Hannah to what's now 2-time world champion paraclimber in the RP2 category. Yeah, she's pretty good at climbing.
I'm better at climbing than I am talking.
Yeah, she said please don't put the mic near me, but well done, that's all you needed to get out. That you where was I going with this? Oh, I knew I'd fall off the chair. So yeah, so we did a lot of travelling. We got to compete all over the world. We got to know a lot of amazing individuals, like the GB Paraclimbing team, and some of the coolest people I've ever met. In 2019, we had the GB's best medal haul ever in history, and we brought back 9 medals. So 20 athletes went out, and we came home with 9 medals. I think like 6 of those were gold. One of which also was Hannah's. Yeah, so 2018 and 2019 were kind of the golden years, and then obviously we had like COVID, and it stopped a lot of competitions, and everything took a bit of a halt. But it also kind of helped you to find another direction. Do you want to talk a little about your outdoor climbing? How are you feeling? I mean, I don't feel like I should talk for you.
Well, I guess I don't. I skipped a few years, but now I now sport climb mostly. I don't tri climb. I have done like 2 tri climbs in my life. I think the first time I ever tried tri climbing, I fell on my gear, which held, which was great news for everybody involved. But now, yeah, I kind of sport climb, and that's kind of what I spend all of my time focusing on, just because I'm a little bit obsessed with this one route down in Anstey's that I still can't do. But you can carry on.
I know that she won't tell you how epic this is, so I'll talk to you about how Hannah's transferred her paraclimbing on plastic to the rock, and I'm pretty sure you're the first female to lead climb initially 7A with one leg, and then you did 7B plus with one leg, and now your project is 7C plus, and the goal is to climb 8A, which there's only a couple of guys in the world that are doing that with a prosthetic or even with a missing limb. So Hannah has to also drag the leg that doesn't work up the rock with her, which adds an extra challenge. You are now learning to use it quite effectively with flagging, but it's not it's not easy. But for any of you that have seen her climbing, if you haven't, watch some of the videos. There's a really cool YouTube video, what's it called, Hannah Again, that kind of shows a bit of her journey and shows you how effectively you can climb with only 3 limbs. It's awesome. So yeah, we're spending a lot of time now out climbing on the rock. Another little U-turn in my life I didn't mention. So in 2019 I opened a bouldering wall called Volume 1 Climbing, which is down south near East Grinstead. And that was like a mini goal of mine for as long as I can remember. So the person that actually gave me the cleaning job at my first wall, High Sports, near my local home, was my best friend Ben. And we decided that wall closed down sort of 5-10 years later, and that day we said, like, we need to replace this. Like, this wall changed our lives, it began our careers. We need to build a wall to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to have what we've had from climbing. So yeah, in 2019, not knowing the world was about to change, we worked our butts off and we opened this wall. And it is one of the coolest things I've ever done. It also was by far the hardest thing I've ever done. If any of you are thinking about opening a climbing wall, don't do it. It's absolutely horrendous. Incredible, but the most stressful thing. I mean, yes, we had COVID. Like, we were open 3 months and then we were closed for what felt like years on and off. But the most amazing thing that I got to experience that I will never regret is like walking down that ramp into the wall and looking out and seeing, like, at times hundreds of people just like grinning, enjoying something that you just made up with your mate. And yeah, it really is a dream come true. But I've actually decided in the last few months to step away from Volume 1 because I've done a bit of soul searching and realised that if I actually look truly into my values, as much as my dream was to open a climbing wall to replace what I had the opportunity to get into as a kid, it's not actually my dream to be stuck in one location building a business that's really stressful. And it does become like a how do we afford to stay open for another month challenge. And that's, as much as it was it still is a really successful business, you are trying to pay ridiculous bills. And yeah, I come to the conclusion that the life that I was leading before, traveling the world, climbing, coaching the people who amazingly all over the world seem to want my coaching now, I was saying no to so many opportunities and I didn't want to say no anymore. So I've actually stepped away from my business and I'm selling my shares in the next few months. So it's now me and Han on the road in our van. Bob is just over there. He's the best. Bob is like our first child, and we're completely in love with him. And yeah, we're literally roaming free now in Bob, and I'm coaching wherever anyone wants me to coach them. And it is a dream come true, and to find that freedom again after feeling, to be honest, really trapped in what you think is a dream, and then when you really study your values, you realise it isn't actually your dream, and you need to step away. And it's hard sometimes, but totally worth it. I've gone way off tangent. That was probably like 10 minutes in a direction I wasn't planning on going, sorry. So yeah, back to the paraclimbing scene, and something that I think is the more important topic to touch on here is more how, when I met Hannah and when I started working with the paraclimbing team, I realised that I had become part of a community that I knew existed and I was passionate about helping, but actually having not experienced it, not firsthand, but in very close proximity with someone else that you love so much, you see the world from a very different perspective. And I realised that no matter how much you can want to see something and be more supportive of inclusivity and diversity, until you really live it, almost like day to day, it's very hard to appreciate where those boundaries lie. And in setting up Volume 1, we tried really hard to make sure we looked at every part of the business and said, would someone have to come up and ask us for help? Like, is there an area of this business that isn't accessible to everybody? And obviously we had the privilege of having Hannah sometimes in her wheelchair, checking that it was really accessible. It is really challenging, and I know that a lot of walls are going to really struggle. It's financially huge. Like, we invested in the middle of a pandemic £6,000 into a chairlift because I was like, we need to make sure people can get up those stairs. And you have to really want to do it. And I think if anything, we need to just, as like a climbing community, look around and say, am I really sort of helping someone here, or am I kind of patronising them because I have to offer them help? Like, can we create a situation where they can feel like everybody else? And I think that's what Hannah's really taught me. Like, you've never wanted to have to ask for help, and when you come up to a set of stairs and we have to take a U-turn, or we can't get on that tube, or whatever it is, it really changed your perspective of life. And yeah, I think that was kind of something that I wanted to share more with you guys, and I'm sure many of you are already aware of this, but for me to have to admit, there was a lot of things that I didn't know at all until I lived them with Hannah, and you teach me every day. And I feel really privileged to be in a position where I can learn from someone every day, and if I can sort of share that, then I'm really keen to do so. Is there anything else that you want to add from your perspective on that? No? You're content for me to keep blabbering? I don't know what I'm saying anymore. What kind of time are we on? Anybody? Right. Oh, okay, does that mean I've spoken for 20 minutes? Wow, I really can talk. Has anybody got any questions? Is there anything that I've not touched on? There's probably a lot of things on my to-do list that I've...
We've got a question. I'm going to come over here.
The chairlift point is a really good one. And you were running that business and were able to persuade yourself and your partner to spend £6,000. Not everyone has someone as passionate to do that, and it does sometimes involve going the extra mile. So what's your advice to people in businesses that don't have that voice?
So I don't know if everyone heard that, but did you hear the question?
So yeah, I was in a really fortunate position that we started our business with the mission statement of our business has to be inclusive and accessible to everybody. So it was very easy when these conversations came up in board meetings where Hannah and I could say, we're not, and that's not good enough. And obviously having more control of the accounts, it wasn't even a question in our minds. But I know a lot of other walls, and knowing the struggle of keeping a climbing wall alive, I can 100% appreciate how hard it is to make those big financial decisions. But I think what we always justified every decision we made on is it the right thing to do? Because fundamentally, if you do the right thing for your community, they'll support you and they will get you through hard times. And we made sure that throughout the whole of the pandemic, we just did the right thing, and our community supported us amazingly, and we've survived through it. So I think if you're ever in that kind of situation or having that conversation, just expressing that kindness and doing the right thing not only do get the joy of doing the right thing, it will always bring money back to you. And I think that's pretty proven, I think, in nearly every business, and we certainly proved it in ours. So awesome.
Has anyone else got any questions that they'd like to ask these two? Anyone? Nope. Bueller? No. Brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing your story. That was absolutely totally awesome. Thank you so much. Round of applause. So I think that you were both around for the weekend.
Yeah, we're around. We're on the sport. I didn't mention that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't mention the sporting. Hands
They're-
are sporting for athlete and I'm a athlete.
Yeah, they're both Sportiva athletes or tag-alongs. You're hardly a tag-along ambassador. So they're going to be on the Sportiva stand for the rest of the weekend. The plan for the rest of the evening is we're going to clear this area. We're going to light the fires, and the rest of the evening is your own. You can still borrow product from DMM if you want to. Pitch your tents. Again, as Hetty was saying, we've got some double park cars, so if everyone who's parked in that field wouldn't mind seeing Milena, that's just a small issue that we have there. Tomorrow morning, the schedule is starting at 7:30. We have some yoga. I think it's 7:30. And then at 8:30, there will be a big welcome for everyone. And at 9 o'clock, you're going to go climbing. For the rest of the evening is your own. So thank you very much for everyone who has made it here so far. Thanks.